What if I told you the greatest empire in human history, Rome, didn't collapse because of mighty armies, but because of money mistakes? Not swords, not spears, not invading hordes. Instead, it was overspending, inflation, corruption, and greed that cracked Rome from the inside. And here's the terrifying part. The same mistakes Rome made 2,000 years ago are happening right now. Picture this. Your entire salary turns worthless overnight. Bread becomes so expensive that even a soldier, the backbone of society, can't afford it. Leaders sit in golden palaces, drowning in luxury, while ordinary citizens starve in the streets. Sounds like a dystopian movie, right? It's not. It's the story of Rome. Stay with me because today you'll uncover 5 shocking financial lessons from Rome's fall. Lessons so real, so powerful, that they could save your wallet, your investments, and maybe even your country's economy. And trust me, once you see how Rome's mistakes mirror our world today, you'll never look at money or history the same way again. At its peak, Rome was unstoppable. It controlled territories from Britain to Egypt, ruled over millions of people, and commanded unimaginable wealth. Its markets bustled with trade, its treasuries overflowed with gold, and its armies marched like an unstoppable machine. Rome wasn't just a superpower, it was the superpower. But here's the twist. For all its strength, Rome's downfall didn't come from a single enemy. No one battle destroyed it. No single barbarian tribe crushed it. The empire imploded slowly, weakened by choices its own leaders made. And at the heart of those choices? Money. Think about this. If an empire with unlimited resources, endless lands, and the most powerful army in the world could collapse because of financial mistakes, what chance do modern nations, or even ordinary people, really have if they repeat the same blunders? That question is going to haunt you through every lesson we uncover. Rome's first and deadliest financial mistake was overspending. Imagine running the largest empire in history. Millions of citizens, thousands of miles of roads, massive borders to defend. The cost of keeping all this under control? Astronomical. Rome's emperors wanted grandeur, lavish palaces, colossal statues, and extravagant games to entertain the masses. And then there were the endless wars. By the 3rd century AD, Rome was fighting battles on multiple fronts, against Persians in the east, Goths in the north, and rebels inside the empire itself. Each campaign drained the treasury. A single legion of 5,000 soldiers cost nearly 10 million sesterces a year, salaries, weapons, armor, food, and supplies. Rome had dozens of these legions. Historians estimate that by the late empire, 70% of Rome's entire budget was going to the military. Compare that to modern America, where defense spending takes about 15% of the federal budget. Rome was bleeding cash, fast. But wars weren't the only drain. Emperors like Nero and Commodus spent fortunes on vanity projects. Nero built the Golden Palace, the Domus Aurea, a sprawling mansion covered in gold leaf, fountains, and rotating dining rooms. Commodus staged grand games that bankrupted the treasury just to play gladiator himself in front of cheering crowds. And then came the bread and circuses. Free grain, free entertainment, endless handouts, all to keep the public distracted from the empire's problems. On the surface, it kept people happy, but behind the scenes, it emptied Rome's reserves. By 200 AD, tax revenues couldn't keep up. Rome had outspent its wealth. Sound familiar? Think about governments today, running deficits year after year. Think about people maxing out credit cards to maintain a lifestyle they can't afford. Overspending isn't just Rome's problem, it's timeless. The lesson: live within your means. Rome's addiction to spending set off a chain reaction of borrowing, taxing, and desperation that weakened its foundations. For you, this means simple budgeting. Spend less than you earn. Because even the mightiest empire couldn't survive when the money ran out. But here's the shocking twist. Overspending alone didn't destroy Rome. What happened next was even more catastrophic. When the money ran out, emperors turned to a desperate trick that would poison their economy for centuries. And it's a trick that governments still use today. Rome's leaders faced a brutal problem. They wanted to spend more, but they didn't have enough silver to mint coins. So they cheated. Emperors like Septimius Severus and later Caracalla began debasing the denarius, Rome's most trusted silver coin. At first, the denarius was 95% pure silver. By 200 AD, it was only about 50%. By the 3rd century, under emperors like Gallienus, the silver content dropped to less than 5%. Coins that once gleamed with value became dull lumps of cheap metal. The result? Rampant inflation. Prices soared. Merchants demanded more coins for the same goods. Soldiers, realizing their pay was worthless, demanded higher wages or refused payment in coins altogether. Ordinary citizens couldn't afford bread, oil, or clothing. The trust in Rome's money, once the most stable in the world, evaporated. And once trust is gone, everything collapses. Soldiers began accepting payments in kind, grain, livestock, even land, because coins meant nothing. Imagine getting your paycheck today, but instead of dollars or rupees, your boss hands you chickens or sacks of wheat because the money is worthless. That's the nightmare Rome lived through. Sound extreme? Look at the world today. Zimbabwe, Venezuela, even Germany after World War I. Hyperinflation always begins the same way. Governments print or debase money to cover spending. At first it seems harmless, but soon the economy burns. The lesson: protect your wealth from inflation. Don't put all your trust in cash. Invest in assets that grow in value. Real estate, businesses, stocks, commodities. And for nations, remember, destroying currency is the fastest way to destroy trust. Here's the chilling reality. Rome's money became so worthless that entire communities abandoned the cities and went back to bartering in the countryside. Think about that. A world-class empire collapsing back into primitive trade just because of bad financial policies. Could the same happen again in our time? That's not a question for tomorrow. It's a question for right now. We've already seen how Rome drained its treasury with endless spending, and how debasing its coins unleashed inflation that shook the empire to its core. But believe it or not, those weren't even the worst mistakes, because Rome's third money disaster is one we're still struggling with today, and it's tearing societies apart in every corner of the world. By the 4th century AD, Rome had turned into a playground for the elite. A tiny fraction of Roman society, about 1%, controlled nearly half of all the land in the empire. Senators, generals, and the super-rich owned vast estates stretching across Italy and beyond. Meanwhile, ordinary Romans, once proud landowners and farmers, sank into poverty. Taxes hit the poor hardest, while the wealthy found loopholes, exemptions, or simply bribed officials. Peasants and small farmers carried the weight. Many couldn't keep up. They sold their land to the wealthy elite, who consolidated power into giant estates called latifundia. The rich got richer, the poor got poorer, and the middle class, the backbone of society, collapsed. The consequences were devastating. Poor Romans abandoned their farms and flooded into cities, desperate for food and jobs. Unemployment soared, riots broke out, loyalty to the empire crumbled, because when people feel the system is stacked against them, they stop believing in it. Sound familiar? Let's be honest, inequality isn't just ancient history. Today, the top 1% of the world controls nearly half of global wealth. Protests, unrest, and polarization are modern echoes of Rome's downfall. The lesson: balance wealth distribution. For individuals, this means reinvesting into your community, supporting education, and creating opportunities that spread wealth rather than hoard it. For nations, it means ensuring that prosperity doesn't become concentrated in a few hands, leaving the rest to starve. Because when wealth becomes a weapon, society turns against itself. Think inequality is just a political talking point? Rome is proof that when wealth tilts too far to one side, even the strongest empire can collapse from within. Ask yourself, if people lose faith in the system, what's left to hold society together? Keep watching, because Rome's fourth mistake shows how even free labor can become a curse when it kills innovation. Rome was built on slaves. Conquered territories supplied endless labor. Men, women, and children forced to work in fields, mines, workshops, and households. By some estimates, in parts of Italy, slaves made up nearly 1/3 of the population. At first glance, this looked like economic strength. Why pay for workers when you can own them? But here's the hidden cost. Slavery killed innovation. When labor is free, there's no incentive to invent machines, improve technology, or boost productivity. Why design a better plow when you can send 100 slaves to work in the field? Why create efficient factories when slave hands are cheap and replaceable? This reliance on slavery left Rome stagnant. While other civilizations tinkered with new tools and ideas, Rome leaned on brute labor. The result? A society that looked mighty, but was hollow inside. When conquests slowed and new slaves became scarce, the system crumbled. Rome had no backup plan, no technological edge to save its economy. Now think about today. What happens when businesses rely on cheap shortcuts instead of innovation? What happens when industries refuse to adapt because the old way seems easier? Whether it's an outdated education, dependence on fossil fuels, or ignoring automation, the lesson is the same. Laziness today becomes collapse tomorrow. The lesson: embrace innovation. For individuals, it means constantly learning new skills and adapting to change. For societies, it means investing in technology, research, and progress. Rome shows us that cheap labor might build an empire, but only innovation can sustain one. Here's the haunting question. Are we repeating Rome's mistake by trading innovation for convenience? Think about industries resisting automation, schools teaching outdated skills, or people avoiding change because it's uncomfortable. Rome thought it could coast forever on free labor. How long can we coast on outdated systems before they collapse under us? If overspending, inflation, inequality, and stagnation weren't enough, Rome sealed its fate with one final mistake: bad leadership. By the late Empire, emperors were more interested in power and pleasure than stability. Take Commodus, for example. Instead of focusing on governance, he spent his days fighting in the Colosseum, pretending to be a gladiator, while the economy rotted. Or Nero, who famously threw wild parties as fires consumed Rome, lavishing fortunes on his golden palace while citizens starved. And here's the crucial point. Leaders ignored economic red flags. Inflation? They debased coins further. Overspending? They raised taxes higher. Riots? They distracted with more games and spectacles. Instead of tackling the roots of the crisis, they treated symptoms with short-term fixes. Sound familiar again? Think about modern leaders who focus on popularity instead of policy, who print money to cover deficits, or who distract citizens with rhetoric while ignoring real economic cracks. Rome teaches us that when leaders value power over policy, collapse is inevitable. The lesson: choose leaders wisely. Support policies and people that prioritize long-term stability, not short-term applause. Because when leadership fails, even the mightiest system falls apart. Rome didn't collapse in a single day. It eroded piece by piece, mistake by mistake, leader by leader, until one morning the empire that ruled the known world simply wasn't there anymore. Ask yourself, if Rome could vanish, what makes us think our nations, our systems, even our personal finances are immune? We've uncovered Rome's 5 fatal mistakes: overspending, inflation, inequality, stagnation, and weak leadership. But here's the twist. Rome's story doesn't just belong in dusty textbooks. It's alive, breathing, repeating itself in our world today. Think about debt. The United States today holds a national debt of over $33 trillion. Politicians promise programs, wars, and projects without asking how the bill will be paid. Just like Rome's emperors, modern leaders gamble with borrowed money, assuming the system will always hold. But history tells us it never does forever. Now think about money printing. Rome debased the denarius until coins were worthless. Today, governments flood economies with freshly minted bills or endless digital credits. At first, it feels like magic. Stimulus checks, easy credit, soaring stock markets. But just like Rome, the bill comes due. Inflation whispers at first, then roars. Inequality? Rome's elites owned vast estates while the masses starved. Today, billionaires own wealth on a scale unimaginable to most. And while some argue that innovation justifies the gap, the social unrest, protests, polarization, political turmoil, echoes Rome's riots and revolts. Here's the haunting reality. Rome thought it was invincible. It thought no force could ever topple its power, yet it collapsed, not from enemies at the gate, but from mistakes within. Now ask yourself, are we repeating the same script? And if so, how much time do we really have left? But don't panic yet. Because Rome's fall wasn't just a warning, it was also a teacher. If we listen closely, its mistakes can guide us to stronger choices today. Let's bring these 5 lessons home, straight to your life, your family, your finances. Lesson 1. Live within your means. Rome fell into the trap of endless spending. Don't budget. Save know the difference between wants and needs. If an empire can collapse from living beyond its means, so can a household. Lesson 2. Protect against inflation. Rome's debased coins taught the harshest truth. Money loses value. Today, holding too much cash erodes your wealth slowly. Protect yourself by investing in assets, property, businesses, skills that grow faster than inflation. Lesson 3. Balance wealth. Rome's inequality poisoned loyalty. For you, balance means giving back. Invest in relationships, community, and shared opportunities. A rising tide should lift all boats, not sink most while a few float higher. Lesson 4. Embrace innovation. Rome relied on slaves instead of progress. Don't get trapped in old habits or outdated tools. Learn, adapt, upgrade. In a world changing faster than ever, stagnation is the real slavery. Lesson 5. Choose leaders wisely. Rome's emperors ignored reality for power. Don't follow leaders who offer bread and circuses while ignoring economic warning signs. Support policies that build long-term stability, not cheap applause. Think about it. These aren't just history lessons, they're survival tools. If ignoring them could topple the greatest empire in history, imagine what ignoring them could do to your wallet, your business, or your nation. And here's the kicker. You have the power Rome's citizens never had. You can learn, you can adapt, you can see the patterns and avoid the traps. History isn't just a story, it's a warning label. The only question is, will you read it? So here we are, standing on the ruins of Rome, a superpower that ruled for centuries, undone not by enemies with swords, but by mistakes with money. Overspending, inflation, inequality, stagnation, bad leadership. And here's the shocking fact. The United States today, with its $33 trillion debt, mirrors Rome's overspending crisis almost line for line. History isn't repeating, it's rhyming. But here's the good news. You don't have to share Rome's fate. By living within your means, protecting your wealth, balancing inequality, embracing innovation, and supporting wise leaders, you can secure your future, even while nations wobble. This is where the past collides with your present. Rome's story is not just a tragedy, it's a guidebook. And if you follow it, you can avoid repeating the greatest financial mistakes in history. If this story opened your eyes, now's the time. Hit that subscribe button and join us here on Historian. Because we're not just telling stories, we're uncovering secrets that could shape your future. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's next. Our upcoming deep dive: how the Black Death created millionaires, a pandemic that killed millions, but also reshaped wealth and power in ways you won't believe. Stay tuned, because history's darkest moments often hide the brightest lessons.